I don't even think I can lift these up to do a thumbnail. They're so heavy. But this is my summer book haul. So summer is coming to an end and I thought that would make it the perfect time to do my summer book haul, aka I think most of, if not all, of the books I got in summer. I don't want to say all of them because sometimes I forget when I bought a book, if I'm being perfectly honest, or when I've been sent a book or I've showed them in other videos. So this is the ones that I hopefully haven't had a chance to talk about yet, mostly, and there's some really exciting books in here that I both bought or been sent by publishers, so I'm really excited to talk to you about them all and then organise them back in my bookcases. So let's actually start with the book I bought yesterday in the supermarket at 9:30 at night. So literally popped into Aldi to buy my friend Jill a birthday card. For context, Jill is an Aldi fangirl, so it seemed appropriate. And I saw that they had a bunch of Halloween spooky romance books for £2.99. And I thought, well, I love spooky, I love romance, and I love cheap. So I bought myself one. I did like have some restraint and I picked up Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. Now this is one that I had seen online. I didn't know a ton about it, but I'd sort of like, you know, clocked it from the corner of my eye and thought, ooh, mortician, gravedigger romance? Yeah, cool, I'm down for that. It's sort of like a contemporary romance, very like, I think, cozy spooky, not like scary spooky. And it's also set in Ireland, which I think should be a ton of fun. So I picked that up yesterday. Nor is that the only romance book I picked up in summer. I actually went on a little bit of a splurge with my husband to Book Lovers Bookshop here in Edinburgh, which is a romance bookshop that is owned by my wonderful friend Caden that you should absolutely be checking out if you're in the city. And we had a book voucher, so we decided to spend it in there on a few different books, and these two were in there. I think there's another one, there's a hardback I'm going to need to find, but the two paperbacks I picked up are A Werewolf's Guide to Seduction, A Werewolf's Guide to Seducing a Vampire by Sarah Hawley, which is the third book in Sarah Hawley's contemporary paranormal romance trilogy. So I've read books 1 and 2, which, oh, I love these long titles, I think they're really fun, but I never remember them exactly. So the first one I think is like a Witch's Guide to Wooing a Demon or A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch. I can't remember which way around it is. They are fantastic. They're some of the most charming romance books I've read ever, and they're also really, really funny, and I love comedy in my books. I really do. I feel like I don't see enough comedy recommendations, and not all romances are rom-coms, but these truly are, so I really enjoy that. And like I said, this is the third book in the trilogy, so they're all about different couples but in this same little magical town. And this one's going to be about a, like, look at this, like, nerdy, cute, cozy werewolf that we met in the previous two books, and then a very bad girl succubus vampire who's on a quest for revenge. Love that dynamic. Then a book you might actually have seen me talk about briefly, which is I Think I'm in Love with an Alien by Anne Aguirre. So I picked this up during my last vlog. If you didn't catch it, it was the video before this. It's just a reading, writing, life vlog, and the last book I picked up in that was this book, although I didn't finish it in the video, but I have now finished it, and everything I said in that video very much stands up. This is not your typical alien romance. It's not like set in space, it's not fast-paced and wild. It is this lovely slow burn friendship to romance between an alien who's stranded on Earth feeling incredibly lonely and a professor who is also experiencing loneliness in her own way despite being from Earth, who connect online over a shared interest, obviously in space, and then meet up at a sci-fi convention with a bunch of other friends. And what's nice is it's not just about the relationship between the romantic leads, although they are the protagonists. It's about this found friendship that they've all made through the internet, and I loved that, and I thought it was so endearing and relatable as somebody who's made a ton of online friends, and I just thought it was this wonderful love letter to companionship, which is just gorgeous. Aha, this was my other book that I picked up in Book Lovers. This is a book that I bought because Caden recommended it to me. I hadn't heard anything about it. They pulled it off the bookshelf and said, Jean, you need to read this, and I said, okay Caden, I trust you. And it's For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lynn, which is, would this be fantasy or paranormal romance? I never know where we draw the line between what is paranormal and what is fantasy, or is paranormal just a subgenre of fantasy? It's a whole other conversation. But I believe it's set in the underworld, or at least some kind of underworld. I don't know of what Folklore, where our protagonist ends up because she dies, but rather than moving on, she decides she's going to work for the guy in charge. Again, I'm not sure what mythos this is based on, but yeah, she decides she's gonna get a job with one of the demons and work in hell, and I guess they're gonna fall in love. It sounds wild, and I love that. I love a wild concept. I love something I haven't read before, so I'm really excited. Now, another book I have actually read is The New Age of Sexism by Laura Bates, How the AI Revolution is Reinventing Misogyny. And I actually read this like way back in summer, and I think it was in my best books of April, May and June video. So I talked about it in greater detail in that video, which I would obviously recommend checking out because I talked about some of my favourite books if you want to learn more. But this is a phenomenal non-fiction book about, well, how misogyny is a core part of a lot of the AI that is currently growing as an industry and online tech that women and children actually are being exposed to, and how it doesn't have like the proper safety features or have women's safety in mind in the design because of how fast it's being pumped out, and it's really, really incredible. Oh, another non-fiction I highly, highly recommend. Now, I won't pretend I've read this cover to cover, but I have read portions of it since it arrived, and this is going to be one of my go-to recommendations from now on for anybody looking to get into classics, ancient history and ancient Greek mythology, and it's The Greek Gods and Their Worlds by Susan Deasy. Now, I knew this book was going to be phenomenal because Susan Deasy was one of my PhD supervisors, and she is an inspiration to me. She is an incredible scholar. She does such incredible work in classics. I am genuinely in awe of her, and I have also sat in on lectures and read articles she's written in the past. So again, I knew this was going to be good, but it's for a more accessible audience. This is for anybody to pick up. It's not like a super academic volume, but it is rooted in the academics. Like, it has that foundation of somebody who is an expert, who knows what they're talking about and can tell you about the Greek gods, their role and place in mythology and in worship, and how that relates to ancient Greek history, and it's just phenomenal. Plus, it has lots of images. We love a picture. We love a picture, don't we? And then look at these designed chapter headings. Absolutely beautiful. So I would just highly recommend checking this out. I kid you not, the doorbell just rang. And I got book post, and it didn't even occur to me to switch the camera back on to like open it nicely in front of you. Look at the lovely wrapping paper it came in. But this is actually a super exciting book, so I'm going to talk about this next. I was sent this by the publisher, and it's Old Songs, Stories of Love and Death from Traditional Ballads by Amy Jeffs and Gwen Burns. So I have a few of Amy Jeffs' other books. She does a lot of books on British legend and folklore, and this obviously fits into that category, but particularly obviously with that focus on ballads, which I love. I don't know if I've said that I'm actually currently trying to write my next fantasy novel, which is a retelling of one of my favourite traditional Scottish ballads, which, guess what, is the first one in this collection, so that's really cool. And then there's others in here like the Twa Sisters, which I'm familiar with, but there's some that I don't think I've come across before, so I'm very excited to read those. Plus, they have beautiful illustrations. Oh, this is such an exciting book, let me tell you. I cannot wait to read more from it and also enjoy those accompanying pictures. I guess I should also talk about another book I was sent by the publisher recently, and that is this non-fiction book called Occult, Decoding the Visual Culture of Mysticism, Magic and Divination by Peter Forshaw. And this is published by Thames and Hudson, who actually have a series of books like this. So there's two others which I also own, Paganism and Shamans, and like, well, the title implies, it is a look at the history of these practices around the world through visual culture. So looking at paintings, engravings, like these. This is really, look at this, this is so cool. This is a talisman featuring a magical square that relates to the planets, and obviously has some sort of like fortune telling, premonition, magical quality to the code. It's not like an object I'm super familiar with, so that's really cool, and I'm really excited to flip through it. Look at this, how cool is this? And I love the book on pagans, which I've read parts of in the past, so I have no doubt I'm gonna love this as well. I think they're really beautifully designed, accessible, interesting books. So yeah, this is really cool. I actually have quite a few books that are related to folklore, mythology, the occult and mysticism, so let's continue with those, shall we? All of these were sent to me by publishers, which I'm super grateful for, and the next one is from the History Press, and that's Of Doves and Ravens, the Witches and Wise Folk of Wales and the Borders, by Benjamin Stimson. So again, pretty self-explanatory. This is a non-fiction book full of stories and history of witches and witchcraft and magical practitioners from Wales and the Borders, because obviously it's very hard to use modern country lines to define history because they don't always apply, so you kind of have to be a bit more broad and open when you're talking about the past, especially with folk traditions, folklore, etc., because there's obviously a lot of shared traditions. So I think this is going to be really, really interesting. I'm obviously quite familiar with the witch trials in the UK and particularly in Scotland, as well as some of the folklore of Wales, but I wouldn't say that I'm particularly well versed in witches from Wales specifically, so this is going to be a really interesting learning book. Then we have, I'm so excited for this. This book is published by Monterey, and not only is it beautiful, but it is a work I have always wanted to own, but I do believe is out of print or hard to get, and some of the like vintage antique copies are so expensive, so I've never read it online through like scanned volumes, and that is Catherine Briggs's Dictionary of Fairies, which I believe has been edited here by Fee Greening. But Catherine Briggs was a very, very influential like mythographer and folklorist from Britain in the 20th century, and I'm very, very excited to own this. Look how beautiful that is. Then we have two books which were sent to me by the British Library Press, one of which is more focused on folklore and one of which is more haunting and ghostly, so perfect for autumn. And the folklore one is a book on trolls. So I wasn't aware of this series before, but it's the Little Book of series from the British Library Press, which I don't think is a super huge series yet, but is expanding, and there's one on dragons, which I need, but I am very excited to own this one on trolls because I don't have any books specifically on trolls. I do have books specifically on dragons. And it's by Caroline Larrington, and it's this gorgeous, gorgeous little book which is basically all about trolls. I assume this has a focus on Nordic folklore and mythology because that's where trolls are most often found, with accompanying images. I love a book with pictures. I think more adult books should have pictures, and I love seeing them depicted in art. This is one of my favourite fairy tale and folklore illustrators, John Bower. Like, how stunning is that? I have a John Bower print in our living room, but yeah, this is just a gorgeous little book. Then we also have one of the books in the British Library's Tales of the Weird series, so this is a much, much larger series, which I think I only own 3 books in, and I say I own. 2 of them are my husband's, but we're married, so they're my books too, right? And this is a fantastic little series. I've also dipped into a few of them in e-copies. They are edited volumes of creepy tales, ghostly tales, horror tales from various writers of the past. Some of them are dedicated to one author, whereas others are dedicated to a theme. So this one is actually Classic Tales of Haunted Cornwall. It's called Phantoms of Kerno, which I think is a really fun theme. I love books like this that kind of like bring different stories together in an interesting way. Like, I think it's really interesting to see how they're edited and what has been compiled. Plus I love me a little haunted story, so it's gonna be perfect for autumn and Halloween. Alright, so let's go to a couple of books I bought myself next, and these are both horror books. One I read, one I haven't. One's a comic book, one's a novel, that I picked up from Dryad Books. So Dryad Books is an online bookstore that specialise in fantasy, sci-fi and horror written by women in particular, and I love them. I think they're absolutely phenomenal, and I treated myself to a couple of books from their shop, so would recommend checking them out. But the first one is the one I've read, and that is the novel Mr. Magic by Kirsten White. Now this is actually my first book by Kirsten White. I have another one on my bookcase, which is retelling of Dracula, that I am now even more excited to read because this was phenomenal. This is a horror novel perfect for fans of Five Nights at Freddy's. It's about, I guess, nostalgia, the weirdness of children's television and how you remember it and how it is something that like hangs around you and you talk about with other people even when you're older. But in this scenario, it's a lot more sinister than I think most children's TV shows really were when I was a kid. And our protagonist is actually a previous cast member from a children's TV show that ended very dramatically because something terrible happened but nobody knows what it was, and she's kind of lost all her memories of that time. So she has been reintroduced to all of her previous cast members and they're getting back together to do this podcast, and it's about the mysteries of the past and what happened and the weird people of the town where this show was filmed and maybe possible paranormal magical elements. It was so compelling and so creative and so just like page turnery. Like I could not put it down. I was so invested. I loved this. Then a comic book I'm super excited to read because it's horror, so I think it's going to be perfect for the upcoming month, and that is The Night Eaters, Volume 1, She Eats the Night by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takada. And look at that cover. As you can imagine, the art inside is equally gorgeous. It's so detailed. I love the style. I like the busyness, but also like the sketchiness. Oh, I don't know, I'm not very good at describing art, but I know what I like, and I like this a lot. It's got that kind of creepy beauty, which I think is perfect for a horror comic book, so I'm really, really excited to read this. It's about Chinese-American twins Millie and Billy who've got it rough, bad relationships, professional failures, and a struggling restaurant. On top of that, their stern mother, Ipo, is forcing them to take time to clear out the decrepit house next door, a house that was on the site of a grisly murder. We love a creepy house book. Oh, another horror book that's very, very exciting because this was the most recent book from the Illumicrate Evernight box. So Evernight is their horror subscription, which is every 3 months, and I've been subscribed to it for a couple of years now, and it's my favourite subscription box I've ever been subscribed to. Not only do they always pick really interesting horror books, but I like that it's every 3 months because it's manageable. I have managed to read most of the ones I've been sent before the next one comes, and they are so beautifully designed. Like, look at those sprayed edges. I'm trying to focus on the book, not my face. Then we have the back cover here, the front cover, and inside, let's take this off, we have these gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous end papers, and even so much incredible detail on the hardback. Like, how stunning is that? And I will say, even if you're not subscribed to Evernight, they do occasionally sell leftover stock on the Illumicrate website, so you might still be able to grab a copy of this. It is beautiful. But obviously, I'm sure the story is just as good in the regular edition, which is also really pretty. So don't be put off if you can't get the Illumicrate edition. I just do love it. Actually, did I even tell you what this was called? This is Library at Hellebore by Cassandra Caw, who I have read a novella by before, which was very creepy, so I have faith that this is also going to be very creepy. Alright, so another book I've actually read and can highly recommend is One Yellow Eye by Lee Radford. So not only did I read and enjoy this book, but I actually wrote an article partly inspired by this book for Pan Macmillan for their website, which I'll try to remember to link down below. And the article was about the kind of new final girl of horror, and how like women don't have to be perfect in these sort of femgore subgenre, and that's exactly what we get in this book. It is sort of post-zombie apocalypse. We have had the zombie outbreak, it has been controlled, all the zombies have been exterminated except for our protagonist, who's keeping her zombified husband hooked up to, like, you know, life-saving machines in their spare bedroom. And nobody knows about that. So she's obviously desperate to find a cure, and she does work in the medical field, so she applies to get a job at this research facility which is specialising in the zombie outbreak. And it's about how, like, even in the aftermath of this gruesome, horrible thing, we cope with that, the trauma, the grief, the loss, the desperation, the denial, etc., and all the messy emotions, and how we don't always do the right things, but how we get through it. And it's so well done. Like, it's a really emotional book and I would highly recommend it. I also love this cover. Then 2 more books I bought myself. This was another like little treat. You might have seen that I uploaded a short where Chris and I went to Waterstones in London to spend all of our saved up Waterstones points. So we went on a little bit of a splurge because it was like they were free. We'd saved up this money for I think like 2 years, and I did actually pick up more books than this, but one of them I can't find. It's The Bridegroom Was a Dog, and I have no idea where I put it, but I have read it because if you watched that vlog I mentioned earlier, it was one of the books I read in full in that vlog and I talked about in more detail in that vlog. So if you want a full review you can get there, but I don't know where I put the physical copy, so I have nothing to show you, and instead I'm going to focus on the ones that I do still have. Including When the Museum is Closed by Emmy Yagi. This is a book I was looking at on the shelf and then a bookseller sort of like popped over my shoulder and went, "That's an amazing book," and I thought, well, you know, you've convinced me. But it did already sound like my cup of tea, and I'll read you the blurb and I think you'll easily figure out why. Rika's new part-time job is to converse with a statue of Venus in Latin every Monday when the museum is closed. I mean, do I even need to read more of the blurb for you to get why I was interested in this? This is obviously set in a museum, and our relationship with the past, and the relationship that this woman develops with this statue of the love goddess Venus. I'm also obsessed with Aphrodite / Venus. I love her. So it sounded really interesting. Then I picked up another horror novel. We are going into the autumnal Halloween months after all, which is House of Monstrous Women by Daphne Fama. Hadn't heard of this before, just saw it face out on the bookshelves in Waterstones and thought, oh, that looks pretty, let me read the blurb. Yes, I think I'll take that home with me. It's another one which is set in a creepy house, and I love creepy houses. I don't want to say haunted houses because they're not always haunted, but I love anything which is about a creepy house. And this book is set in 1986 and follows Josephine del Rosario, who's the town pariah, left destitute after her parents were assassinated and destined to marry a man twice her age. So when Herea, an old friend, offers Josephine an escape, she can't say no. All she needs to do is spend one night in the Ranoko house and play a children's game of hide and seek. If she wins, she can have everything she wants, even, perhaps, Herea's heart. But the manor is sprawling and nightmarish, crawling with insects and rotting from the inside out. The servants stand silently in corners and won't meet her eye. Worst of all, the house itself seems to want to trap Josephine. I mean, that sounds amazing, doesn't it? Alright, so 2 books left, both of which were sent to me by publishers, and the first is a proof copy of Queer Georgians by Anthony Delaney, which is now out, and I can highly recommend, because not only have I read this cover to cover, but I actually chaired an event at Edinburgh Book Festival with Anthony, and it was so much fun to talk to him about this book. This is phenomenal. It is, unsurprisingly, a history of the Georgian era in Britain from a queer perspective, looking at evidence for queer folk in the Georgian era. And I have to say, I know very little about the Georgian era. I know a lot more now, but I knew very little going into this, and it was fascinating. I loved learning about the figures that Anthony had sort of identified from the Georgian era who could be considered queer by modern standards, how they were treated, discriminated against, but also how they flourished and found themselves and expressed themselves in a time where they were being discriminated against with potentially quite dangerous consequences. I found that fascinating and inspiring, and I loved it. It was so interesting, and it was obviously so well researched. That very much came through in the reading experience, so I would highly recommend this. And then lastly, we have a book that I was just sent by Pan Macmillan, which is a collection of short stories called Good and Evil and Other Stories by Samantha Schweblin and translated by Megan McDowell. These stories were originally written in Spanish, and I am always looking for more short story writers. I love a short story collection, so I'm excited to try this. And it sounds like they're going to be quite surreal and eerie, which is something I really love in like my literary short stories. So it's described in the blurb as sculpted and lucid, strange and uncanny. Good and Evil and Other Stories is a gripping blend of the raw, the astonishing and the tragic. Every story is as perfectly unexpected as a snare, exquisitely wound, ready to snap at a touch. Here, a young father is haunted by the consequences of a moment of distraction. Tragedy is complicated by the inexplicable appearance of an injured horse. An attempted poisoning leads 2 writers to sensational conclusions, and a lonely women's charity is rewarded with home invasion. So I think these are going to be kind of dark, kind of thought-provoking, insightful, and I'm just excited to dive in. So those are all the books that I remember that I got in summer, or since my last book haul at least. Hopefully you enjoyed this book haul. Let me know if you read any of these, if any of them are on your TBR, if there's any you think I should get to ASAP. And until next time, happy reading. I'll see you all again soon. Bye everyone.